Hey folks, welcome to Ruston's Boneyard. Winter is upon us and so it is time to make bone broth. And here I've got a bunch of bovine knuckle joints. In a cow, all of the marrow we think about, the kind of pink, whitey, lovely, delicious fat, that's all in the shin and knuckle joints, okay? So there's only actually 4 proper marrow bones effectively in a cow. So these have got quite a bit of nice meat on them as well. What we're going to do is we're going to start off just seasoning them and roasting them off for a couple of hours in a pretty hot oven, about kind of, you know, sort of 200 degrees. Then we're going to cook them down into broth in some water. So let's start by just adding some salt. Now, what I'm going to do, after about 20-30 minutes, I'm going to take some of this marrow off and separate it because it's a really nice thing to have. You can just scrape it out raw and use it for stuff, but it's really hard to get it all out. So I'm going to let it melt slightly, and then that way it's going to soften up, and I'm going to be able to basically just pour, scoop it out, and I'm going to keep it in a bowl. And I'm going to use it for things like eating with a spoon, or it's wonderful mixed into ground beef mixtures to add a bit of fat content, and of course it's highly nutritious. So what I want to do is I want to put these sections with the marrow exposed, I want to put those upright so it doesn't just pour out into the bottom of here, and then it's just going to melt off for a bit, and then we'll have a look. Okay, so let's get this into our oven now, and I'll come back in about half an hour and show you where we're going. My bones have been in the oven now for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, so I'm going to get them out and have a look, and let's see if it's going to be time for us to start getting some of this marrow out. Yes, it is. Sometimes it's really difficult to sort of get access to it because there's sort of bits of kind of bone fibers that go across and stuff, in which case, you know, it's just going to melt as you go. You can come back, pour some more out as you go through the process. That one looks like it's going to give up quite a bit more. Look, there's a big chunk come out there. I can just pour straight out of this tray. You can see there, gosh, a load of rendered fat. Pretty handy, because we don't want tons of fat in our bone broth. Normally, you know, once you've set a bone broth in the fridge, you know, you're ending up lifting all the fat off. So, you know, better if we can just separate it and use it as something valuable. Do it now, because once it's been pressure cooked, you know, we don't really want that fat. It's been up at quite high temperature. So here we go, back in the oven. I'm not going to touch it now for another hour or so. See what happens. Alright, catch you later. Hi, welcome back. So here we are, we've got our bones, they've all roasted. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cook this in a pressure cooker. Now the reason I'm going to do that, what a pressure cooker does is we're pressurizing the boiling water, and that changes the boiling point of the water. It allows us to make the water hotter than it would otherwise be before turning into steam. So what that means is that we can actually extract more nutrients from these bones, and we can break them down more effectively, even to the point where some sections of bone will actually just crumble to dust. You'll see when this comes out quite how much these break down. Now all around here, all this collagen-y soft tissue, this is all going to break down and melt down and infuse through our bone broth. So the pressure cooker, it's on the hob at the moment, and I've got some water in there boiling, and I'm going to put these bones in. Before I do, this is a real treat, okay? It's a little chef's treat. If you go around these bones and you find just a couple of little bits where this stuff is crisped up on the outside, it is just these little bits of melted down connective tissue. Oh, they are really quite a treat. Now don't do what I normally do, which is to sit there with a knife rather unthinkingly just cutting it all off and eating it. Because what will happen is you will actually lose the flavour and the advantage of having all of this stuff in your actual broth. I am going to just find a couple more bits. So, here's my big pressure cooker. I'm just going to pop the bones in. And this is the advantage of having a big one, because obviously the capacity is going to greatly affect how many of these big knuckles we can fit in here. Now, I'm making quite a big batch of this and I don't know what all this is going to be used for. So I'm not going to deliberately flavour it with anything, but it is very common practice to put aromats into these kinds of broths and stocks. And what people would normally put is things like bay leaves, parsley stalks, thyme, peppercorns, garlic, shallots. All those kinds of things can get added. I don't know quite how I'm going to use all of this yet, so I'm going to keep it completely plain with one small exception. I'm going to put a drop of red wine vinegar into here, and what that's going to do is it's going to help the nutrients extract from the bones. So just a bit like that. I'm going to get this on the hob. Let's see what happens. Now, we've got our pressure cooker. It's had about 2 hours pressure cooking all these bones, and now I'm going to show you what we end up with. First of all, let's get these bones out and show you what happens to one of these big bones when they go in the pressure cooker for 2 hours. This just falls to pieces. They are just totally broken down, and it would take a day, 2 days even on the hob to break down some of these really big bones, and in the pressure cooker that happens in 2 hours, and that is why it is just so useful. Now what I want to do is take this bowl here and just have somewhere to put some of these bits of meat, because this is like the best. Look, you see the bones actually fall in half here. That is how melted this all is. But I'm going to keep this meat because these bits are just the most incredible bits to put into a bit of broth. You know, if you mix all this up together, this is sticky. I mean, I don't know if you can see that, but it's just like gooey, and all this stuff that was just like a rock is just melted, and that's going to have left a load of gelatin in our wonderful bone broth. Now what I'm going to do, I've got to bin the trash, as you call it in America, down here beside me, and as I get these bones stripped off, I'm just going to chuck them straight in. I mean, this is just falling apart right here in the pressure cooker, so I can't. I mean, that bone is just done. That is soft. If I dig my nail into that, look, I'm just breaking it off. That bone has literally gone to powder. It's a really nice bit, actually. Quite tempting just to eat it. I will warn you, you can eat the bones, they're an amazing source of calcium. I will warn you, it will block you up somewhat. Here is another amazing bit of collagen stuff. That has got such a big tendon piece on there here, you can see, and it is just melted. If you ate that, it'd just be like the softest jelly. Now, watch out. When you use tongs to lift these big bits of bone out, look, falling apart right in front of us. When you lift these big bits of bone out, they are slippery. These bits are covered in this very, very slippery collagen. And what can happen is that they can slip back into the liquid and splash it up at you. So be super, super careful if it's very, very hot. You will get scalded by this stuff when it first comes out. Look at that. They left a lot on this batch, which is really handy for us. It means we get all this lovely Lovely, lovely collagen. Strain it into here. And we'll just pour the rest of this into here. Bang. A lovely bowl of incredible melted collagen-y bits and 2 bowls of stock. The move is to put plates on top of these and to put them in the fridge overnight. The fat that you can see floating on the surface, that's going to set solid. So what we can then do is just lift the fat off and discard it. We don't really want this fat on here. We've got plenty from the rendering earlier. And then we're good to go. Bone broth. Try it.